Check, 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 check. Hi, everyone. How's it going? Nice to see all of you again. Not long after my stream yesterday. But yeah, great to see everyone again. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to pop over into the chat for a little bit just to say hi. But hi, everyone. It's so great to see everyone in the community kind of coming back again. So really excited for today. My name's Claire. I also go by dolltr, but I mostly go by Claire when I'm teaching at 343 Labs and when I'm teaching in general. I'm an instructor at 343 Labs, so I'm an Ableton Certified Trainer, and I mostly work with the Ableton Live classes too, which is cool. But yeah, hi to TWD, not Grauman, who commented about the weekend not being long enough. I totally agree. I wish it could be longer. I feel like, you know, for a lot of us who are in the field and maybe in this kind of like remote situation now, it's so hard to stop. I don't know if anyone's in the same boat as me, but I almost feel like because I'm constantly at home, it's all that I can do. So I just do things at home without stopping. So need to remind myself to take breaks every now and then. Hi, Jonathan. Nice to see you again. Dave, great to see you. Hope you're having a great Monday as well. Hi to Andrew. Hi to Thomas from 343 Labs, who's managing behind the scenes for us as well. Ari, how's it going? Oh, Ryan, hi, nice to see you too. Ari had a really great track yesterday, everyone. So I briefly alluded to this at the beginning of the show, but oh no, is my camera off? My camera is off. Oh dear. Okay, cool. Give me 1 second. Why is it off? It's okay. If it's not working, then you know what? I might just switch my camera around. So let's see. We got this instead. 1 second, everyone. Oh, that's a shame. Oh no. Okay, cool. I'll use this camera instead. Maybe there was a slight malfunction, but I'm here. Hello. And yeah, let's keep going. No cameras are going to stop us. Oh, I keep looking there. No, it's here. No cameras are going to stop us. So we're back here. Yeah, Ari had a really great track yesterday. And thank you, everyone who submitted the tracks for the feedback session. It's usually led by Atropolis or Adam Partridge, who's another Ableton Certified Trainer at 343 Labs. But some things came up. But no, I was really happy to jump in like 30 minutes before and be like, oh, do this. But it was fun. Thank you always for coming in, and great to see everyone. Dave, love all the new graphics. Thank you so much for that comment. I will relay that information to our new graphic designer as well as TAETRO, our creative director. He was really the brain behind making sure that we had cool graphics for season 2. So yay, TAETRO! Amazing. And Jonathan, excited to learn something new in Ableton. Kidding. It's funny. I'm always interested in learning new stuff about live. I think like even people have this misconception that Ableton certified trainers know everything. I like to think that we know nothing, but because of that, that's what makes us powerful in a weird sort of way. Maybe that even extends beyond like Ableton certified trainers. It's like, you know, the more you don't know, the more you know. Because there's so much to learn, and even I'm still like, you know, figuring out new ways to work with instrument racks or chain selector, like I'm going to talk about with all of you today. Hi, Todd. Nice to see you. And yes, also, Thomas, thank you for that reminder. We will be giving away a $300 voucher for 343 Labs today, or rather this week, rather. So if you enter, I think Thomas might put the info in the YouTube chat, so please look out for that link, and we want you to enter so that you can win. So that you can win cool stuff. And you can win cool stuff from us since we're the ones giving this week's. But in previous weeks too, we've done giveaways for Arturia licenses, Ableton vouchers too. So the more you stay tuned, the more you can be entered to win stuff. Fender Bender, yes. All of the 343 streams that you see on our channel are recorded. And if you want to be updated for whenever we go live or anything like that, you can always subscribe and turn on the notification bell to be notified of whenever we, you know, put things up. And yeah, thanks so much, Andrew. I think like the 343 Labs, and I'm saying this really honestly, like I love working in the 343 Labs community because it really feels like a community. I don't loosely use that word. But yeah, it's cool. It's nice. I'm really glad to be here and to, you know, be a privileged part of this community to be here. Yes, thank you, Thomas, for putting the link in the chat. Enter the link, everyone. We want you to win. But as far as today goes, oh, this is going to be a slight shame because you won't be able to see some of the things I'm doing on Push because of the camera situation. I really don't know what's happening. Let me just try and restart it maybe. But what I'm going to do is talk about chain selector. But before I even dive into that, if I could get a tempo suggestions, so a BPM and a key from the chat as we usually do, that would be awesome. So if you're in the YouTube chat, I have my eyes on the chat. I'm going to take the first BPM and key, maybe from different people. So we'll see if I could get a BPM and a key. And remember, Ableton Live's BPMs can go all the way from 99 to, all the way from 220 to 999. So yeah. Oh, Jonathan, mentioning Beattober. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. Beattober is started by our dear friend TAETRO. So, yay, TAETRO. Ryan, thank you, 140. Let's do 140. Gonna put that here in live. And also push is not registering. That's all right. Technology always works and doesn't work. So we have a great relationship with it. Oh, yeah, it's working now. Good. And cool, all the tempos. Dave, we'll take your A minor. Thank you. So we got 140 and A minor. I'll start off today by doing some drums, and then we'll talk a little bit about what exactly Chain Selector is and the ways that we can use it. So since we're at 140, let's do like let's do like some maybe half-timey things. So let's put on the metronome. Yep, okay. Ooh. Cool. So let's go ahead and put in a few sounds. Oops. Let's do that here. Cool. Let's do a couple more as well, just to get like a beat going. Maybe do some repeat stuff on push without accent. Cool, there we go. Cool, metronome off, and we're good to go. Great, so we got this going. Now, Chain Selector, people think about it a lot, and if you even read like the Ableton reference manual online, which I highly encourage you to. At this point, I think if you've tuned in for a long time, you know how much I love manuals. But there's a really great description of what it is. That said, people don't usually think about finding it, and actually I may have given myself away by opening that. But people sometimes aren't able to find it because they're not sure where it is. So Chain Selector usually is only available or visible if you have a rack, and that's useful because the entire series that I've kind of been doing for season 2 so far has all been on racks, like different kinds of racks. You got your drum racks, you got your instrument racks, you got your audio effect racks as well. So lots of these different types of options. Over here, I've got a drum rack. Maybe that'll let us have an instrument, a chain selector, excuse me. So we've got the drum rack. Let's see if we can get an audio effect rack, and then we'll also get an instrument rack up. So if I could get a suggestion for an instrument from the chat, I'm going to use a generic kind of sound first. Maybe I'll use a grand piano, but from the YouTube chat, a suggestion for an instrument, please. So let's go ahead and put on this sound. I got my drums going. Maybe I'll build on the drums a bit more while waiting for the suggestion from the chat, and also do a little bit of recoloring to tidy up my different parts. Usually I think of this as being orange, so great. Let's assign track color to clips. Oop, okay, cool. But yeah, from the YouTube chat, a suggestion as well. Ryan, yeah, chain selectors. TWD, your question will be answered in the stream later today, so stay tuned and stay patient. Ooh, orchestra steps, cool. Let's go for that. Maybe let's do like brass. I'm thinking some brassy sounds. So let's do like, let's see if there are steps. Let's look for steps, type it into the search bar. Ah, nice. Maybe like synth steps. These are not very stabby. Ooh, no, they're not super stabby. I'm sad. Maybe just stab. How about stab? Yeah. That's kind of cool. Cool. And it's also got a minor key to it already, so maybe it'll help us with the A minor stuff, but... Ooh. Cool. Let's set the scale on push to A minor. And A minor. Oh dear, cool. Let's put in some stabs over here. There we go. Cool. For now, we'll just leave that as that, maybe. And you know what? Maybe I'll do another track. I'll add another track over here, and we'll also, put something else on it that maybe it's a little bit more A minor-y. So let's put on some, like, that we can tell the key of it, and that's not a chord. Let's do... Let's maybe have a... do we get any other suggestion? It's October time to get spooky of it. Jonathan asked AeroKit. That's a great question. So let's actually find out where AeroKit is. So here's a really neat tip, everyone. Usually if you're trying to navigate where kits are in Live, using places is really good. So if I type into the search bar AeroKit comes from Skitter and Step. So that is a curated pack in Ableton Live 10. Curated packs can be downloaded from the Ableton website. So I hope that answers your question. TWD, time to get spooky. Well, yeah, maybe if I look at, if I type in like ghost, I'll find a cool sound, maybe. Will I? Oh, yes. Ghost organ. Ghost lead. Totally. So now, that is pretty spooky. I'm glad that we got that. Let's do like something pretty simple. Cool. So now that we got this, we've got our ghost lead. Let's take a look at exactly what is in the ghost lead, because I do think it might already be in an instrument rack. How do I know that? Here's maybe the first tip of the day. Whenever you're browsing the Ableton Live library, so in Live's browser on the left-hand side, if you type in certain words, you'll be able to look for certain presets, but even if you don't type in, so let's clear out Ghost and we can see more options. You'll see all of these files ending with .adg, or sometimes they could say .adv. Now, anytime they say .adv, you're probably just gonna get an instrument on its own without any kinds of effects. That's because the .adv suffix, if I'm not wrong, it should be Ableton device. So that's why DV, it's there. And if someone could corroborate that, that would be great. But the difference is that when you have a .adg, it's in a group. So in a group, we really mean in a rack. That's what we mean. So if I head over here into the Ghost Leads track, I'm going to double click on the track name. I can see that, yes, this is indeed already in some kind of rack. It's in an instrument rack. And this is because I've got all the macros up front, so I'm able to kind of see them. A general rule of thumb is that if you ever see macros already on an instrument, it's probably already in a group. You'll also notice that the visual difference is that the .agd files have this like little line down the middle of their icons, but the .adv files do not. So maybe just even as like a quick visual sort of thing, I've got this brass ensemble staccato patch. If I drag and drop it here, oh yeah, whoops, my attached library isn't here, but this is just showing us the simpler in this case, or the sampler. Now, if I have a kind of group instead, we see the macros. So that's what I meant by having macros or not having macros. So great. The Ghost Lead itself is already in an instrument rack. Let's take a look at what's inside it. So this is something that I briefly talked about in the week that I did instrument rack stuff with y'all too. But let's go ahead and open this up. The easiest way to open this up is through using the icons on the instrument itself. So usually it looks pretty compact and really nice when you have the macros, but there are two tiny little icons here that will let you show devices, which is this lowest one. It shows you all of the things inside the instrument, like the actual sound generator itself. In this case, it's Operator, which is one of Ableton Live's native instruments. It's an FM synthesizer. And also any of the audio effects after. So for example, we've got EQ3 on this. We've got delay on this too. And I'm just double clicking to expand and collapse all of these. So we've got reverb here too. We've got chorus here as well. And you'll notice that all of these, or not all of these, but some of these have these little green dots next to certain parameters. And what this means is that these controls are mapped to the macro controls of that instrument rack already. So because of this, we're able to control things from just the overall macros without having to dig deep into the instruments. And that's why we can even close this up. That's why you can have the 8 macros there and not have to look at any of the internal stuff. But we want to do that in this case because we want to see what's under the hood, right? So let's open this up. We've got our devices. This second icon above the show or hide devices icon is the show or hide chain list icon. And this is the chain list. Now, everything that you see over here, the operator, EQ, delay, reverb, chorus, is in a chain within the instrument rack. So I like to think of this as almost being like a path, which it essentially is. You could call it a path as well, an audio path. But it's really some kind of road that I imagine all of these devices are lined up in. It's like a bunch of cars in a road. I like to think of it in that way. And that's because you're really sending essentially the audio down this path, down this road, and it's traveling through this chain of devices. So that's what really a chain is. A series of devices that you can make audio pass through, some kind of signal that you're sending through. Sometimes the audio is generated from within the same rack, like in this case, in which case it's an instrument rack. But other times the audio could be from something else and then passing through an audio effect rack. But the principle is the same. So over here, I've got Chain Selector and I've got this ghost lead up, which sounds like... We've already established if I can play a minor scale properly. But we've got all of this happening over here. Now, there are a couple of ways that we can start using Chain Selector, but maybe to start off with, we can add some other kind of synth. So if I can get a suggestion from the YouTube chat, anyone want to suggest a specific kind of sound that might sound good layered with this? Like just as a reminder, we have this clip at the moment. Ghosty-ish, as TWD suggested. So any suggestions for another thing that we could layer with this? Maybe some other kind of lead sound. Yeah, Jonathan, I just saw your thank you. You're most welcome. Thank you for tuning in. But yeah, a suggestion for a sound that we could layer with this that might sound cool. Sounds kind of ghosty. If I play the other stuff. Ooh, kind of, hi, how's it going? A bass. So a bass could be cool. But in this case, we have some kind of lead, right? So we're not really thinking about like a bass necessarily, although maybe we can add a bass in later. Mick, thank you. Filtered saw wave. Let's look for some kind of lead that is a saw-based sound. And maybe let's go ahead and look in analog. I think we might get some mileage from analog. So let's do saw. And oh, Dave, D50. Maybe the next one we'll do like a D50 type of thing. Oh, Rio, thank you so much for tuning in. I went to college at a college called Berklee College of Music, and I'm now a professor there. So if you want to, you can reach out to me outside of this, and we can talk academic stuff. But back to this over here. We've got analog. Let's look for a synth lead and ooh, big saw lead. You know what? Let's use our big saw lead. So let's go ahead and check out the ghost lead. I opened up the chains list as you saw. Now what I'm going to do is stack the ghost lead up with this big saw lead. So let's drag and drop it here. Again, that happened very quickly, so I'll repeat that one more time. We grabbed this big saw lead from the presets in the browser, and I'm just dragging and dropping it into the chains list. So now we see the operator is the first chain in the list, and big saw lead is the second chain in the list. So, first of all, this answers TWD's question. Yes, you can have racks within racks. So this is essentially a rack, which is what you asked about. But within this chain list, we can still adjust a couple of things, right? So before we move forward, I'm just gonna play this now so we can listen to it. Here we go. Ooh, that's nice. Very cool. So we got the stacks. Before it was this. So you can also mute chains within the chain list as well. Now it's this. Let's make it softer. Now this is kind of where Chain Selector kind of comes in handy. What if I wanted to maybe find some way to blend between the two sounds? Because I like how each of them sound individually. For example, the big saw lead sounds like this. Which is nice. It's a cool kind of lead. And then our original ghost sounded like this. So that's where Chain Selector comes in handy. It can let you do a couple of things. It can let you select each of the specific chains and even blend them in some ways, and that's what we're going to take a look into now. So let's go ahead and click on chain over here, and we've popped out this entire thing. By default, usually the chains are hidden because it's actually no, it depends on how you set things up. If the chains are hidden, you can have the option to show them by clicking on chain. Sometimes they might be hidden if you're opening up a preset so that things are just a little bit more organized and you don't have this like long chain hanging out. But let's show the chains because we want to work with the chains. And this over here is what we call the chain select ruler. So you can see that we've got this little almost slightly translucent blue handle that we can move from left to right, and the color may vary depending on what your Ableton Live background or hue looks like. So it lets you though move from 0 to 127, and that's our general MIDI spectrum of numbers that we can use. So this is really what chain selection is. We're trying to figure out if there's a way for us to move from one chain to another. Now, where are the chains itself? Because this is actually empty. Like, I don't know if you're seeing this here, but there's nothing going on from like 1 to 127 or something. So like, what is Claire talking about? Like chain selection, so we need to first make sure that there are chains to select from, that there are chain areas to select from. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull both of these out. And this is really what chain selection is. Actually, what I'll do is I'll make this stop halfway. So maybe the first one I'll do like 64, and maybe for now I'll do this. I'll do it the manual way, and then I'll show you a fun way to do it. Great. So I've done this now in such a way that if I move the position of my chain selector, which is this little blue thing, at different points in time, in different parts of this chain selection, I'm going to be able to choose a specific sound that I want to hear. Okay, cool. Kenneth, thank you. Yeah, totally. So as far as like the lower bass sounds, maybe we can add that in later as well. Jonathan, yes, chains are similar to layering. For people who have used Reason or Mainstage, it's a little similar to how layering works there. For Reason, it's the combinator. But Jonathan, I have a totally different. I did a stream 2 or 3 weeks ago specifically about instrument racks. So if you want to be able to understand that, like, you can feel free to join in as well. Yeah, thanks everyone for trying to explain it. I mean, we have to be careful about like a chain is like a rack because it's actually the same. It does involve layering too. So I would be careful of, turning down, immediately shutting off that definition because it is like layering. It's also like parallel processing, but it is like layering too. So it's like, it's not as if one cancels out the other. There's tons of ways to use chain selectors, and maybe that's why in a lot of my streams you'll find me highly encouraging flexible thinking. It's like, how many ways can we use Ableton Live? But back to this. Okay, cool. So right now I'm gonna put my chain selector over here at 64. You'll notice I kind of have this part where I'm overlapping the two. So if I play back this clip, I'll hear both. I got my operator and then I got my big saw lead too. I'm also gonna make the overall volume of the track a little softer for now so you can hear me. But what if I move my chain selector to the front? Operator only. So only the ghost lead. Now I'll move it to the back over here. Yeah. Cool. So it essentially is like layering. It's layering, but I would say it's more nuanced, and it lets you do a couple of more interesting things than just your traditional idea of layering, because you could even do things like blends, which I'm about to show you. So what if I wanted to maybe figure out some kind of way that I could navigate between these two layers, but really almost like blending? That's where the power of chain selector really comes up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out these zones, which is really what we call them, the chain zones, so that each of them is stretching across the entire length of 0 to 127. So theoretically, in this way, whenever I play the sound, no matter where I am in the chain, I'm always going to hear the both of them. But there's a way for me to control exactly how much of each I'm hearing. So almost as if it's like fading between the two. And that's really where we can take a look closer in here. And this is really, it's a little bit minute, but if you are able to see this, you'll probably understand why I love chain selector so much. So what I just did is that on top of each of these blue bars, there's a tiny, tiny white bar that lets you control the fades of each of the chains. So I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna fade the big saw lead this way, and I'll do operator inversely. Whoops, I just need to make sure I'm grabbing the right thing. Yeah, there we go. So now you can kind of see these gradients that are going in either direction. Now what this means is that if my chain selector is all the way to the left, I'm only gonna hear the stuff that's blue, which in this case is the big saw lead. But if my chain selector is all the way to the right, I'm only gonna hear my ghost lead, which was the original ghosty thing that TWD suggested that we went with. So let's take a listen. Here is the big saw lead all the way to the left, and then I'll slowly move this chain selector across. Also make this sound louder. Yeah, cool. It's funny, kind of, I saw your comment about bending your point of view. I feel like that's what we should always be doing. I mean, maybe this is a little bit of a philosophical digression, but that's the power, I think. I think one of the biggest, I'm trying to find the right words for this. I guess one of the biggest hurdles for a lot of people, not just producers, but I think human beings, is just closed-mindedness. The more open-minded we can be, the greater the number of possibilities we have. And that's why I have dolltr, because she is a really open mind, more open-minded than Claire. So let's go ahead and really take a look at what's happening here. So you can hear that I'm blending between these two as I'm moving the chain selector. And what I'm doing now is with my mouse. So I'm not actually doing anything with a controller. I'm just clicking and I'm dragging from left to right. Gee, I wish there were a way that we could use a controller to do this. And sure enough, there is. So what I usually do and there's, people have tons of ways of managing chain selectors, but what I tend to do is that I like assigning this chain selector to a macro knob over here. And I talk a little bit more about macros in one of my other streams as well. But to do that, I probably need some kind of empty macro. So over here in the ghost lead rack, there is a macro that's actually controlling the volume of the overall chain itself. I'm going to unmap that. So I'm going to say remove mapping so that this ends up becoming available. And I'm going to rename this volume knob chain selector instead. And I'm also going to color it a different color. So I'm going to right click on it and say, yep, let's do like this bright pink color. And then from here, I'm going to right click on this actual chain select ruler, right click on that and say map to chain selector. Now this knob on my rack is able to scroll between the mix of the operator and my ghost lead. So this is a really great way also of navigating between different kinds of chains and different kinds of volumes as well. So you can try to move back and forth in between here, and you can even do it from some kind of controller. So let's go ahead and look at the device options over here. Great, and I've got my ghost lead. And on push, and this is really the part where I'm sorry that I don't have the other camera working right now. But yeah, that's really the part where you'll be able to control it from some kind of controller. So assuming we have all of our clips going, let's also decrease the volumes. So that's we got everything. Let's make all of these softer too. Cool. And now, on the device itself, let's scroll. Cool. Now, I know that the volume of my big saw lead, because I turned it down all the way just now, it's a little bit off, so I'm going to just set them both back to the default by double-clicking on their names. And let's go ahead and try this again. So now we should have some kind of smoother fade between the two. Yeah. Cool. Nice. Okay, cool. So I'm going to take a pause there, but that's the first way that you can use Chain Selector. One of the ways. The second way is going to be related to something that I'll bring up in the second half of the stream, which you'll find in the title of the stream. So maybe you know what that is. But for now, though, I'm going to take a moment to pop over into the chat. TWD, I was about to ask if there's a way to feather between change. Did you learn DAWs after Photoshop? Yeah. So, feather, actually, could you clarify that a little bit, please, about the feathering stuff? Because I do use Photoshop, but I'm not super familiar with the term. So if you could enlighten me, I would much appreciate that. Thank you. Kenneth, yeah, it's a bit hard for me. You don't have a MIDI controller or keyboard. You have to draw in all of my notes when I compose. The ghost lead seems delayed a bit. Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll answer these one at a time. But as far as controllers or keyboard goes, you can also do some things related to key mapping in Ableton Live too. So even if you don't have a MIDI controller, you can do key mapping, which is if you turn on the key button over here, you could even choose maybe the chain selector. Let's assign it to the letter A. So now what I've done is I've clicked on chain selector. I went into key mapping mode by clicking on the keyword at the top right of live. So I clicked on key, everything turned orange, or most things turned orange rather. And then I clicked on chain selector, and on my computer keyboard, I pressed the letter A. Now, when I exit key mapping mode, the letter A is going to help me shift between the positions of my chain selector. So unfortunately, we have a lot of buttons that you get. So anything that's giving a single command, like on or off certain buttons on certain controllers or computer keyboards in this case, you can only get an on or an off message. So you're not going to get any incremental stuff, but maybe there's a way that we can work around it with dummy clips, which is part 2 of this as well. So, so we've got chain selector going right now. I can switch between these with my computer keyboard. I'm just pressing A to switch between the two of these, right? And yeah, so we'll get into the dummy clip part later. As far as the delayed stuff goes, it might likely be because of the attack. So I think by delay, and correct me if I'm wrong again, but you know, as far as like delay goes, I think what you might mean is that compared to the big saw lead, the ghost lead seems to be coming in a bit later. You can feel free to correct me if I misunderstood that, but that might be because of the attack. So the ghost lead actually has a little bit of a longer attack, which means that instead of coming in immediately, so instead of ba 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 ba, it's coming in da, 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 and that might be what you mean by delay. So maybe fixing the attack could help us a little bit. If we change the attack on the ghost lead, maybe that might help us. So here is the big saw lead coming in quite on the ball. Here's the ghost lead. So it's got a little bit of a quicker attack right now. So hopefully that answers your question, Kenneth. Well, yeah, thank you, TW, also for the suggestion. Aqua had a question. I'm not sure if that was directed to me or directed to everyone. I make like many different genres of music, as I'm sure a lot of producers do too. But yeah, feel free to share what kinds of things you make in the chat, everyone. TWD Feather is the option in Photoshop where either using fill or selection that blends your fill of the background. Ah, okay, cool. Yeah, totally. So the fading kind of thing. Yeah, I think I understand what you mean. So yeah, cool. Thank you. And yes, kind of great to hear about that. I'm glad that it was my guesses weren't too far off. Thanks for the questions, everyone. Really love the questions. So now that I have rejuvenated myself with a sip of coffee, let's look a little bit into the dummy clip slide. Now, people often ask like a lot about dummy clips. It's like, I want to use dummy clips. Like, teach me how to use dummy clips. So here's my hot take. I think it's oftentimes better to find a problem first and then find the solution. If that makes any amount of sense at all. Just because I think like dummy clips for a lot of the time are the solution to the problems that we have. But if we don't have the existing problem, then it's hard to like find a solution to fit the problem, if that makes sense. So I think like dummy clips, people talk about it often, but I think what's most important to know when dealing with dummy clips is that usually their use is to solve a problem that wouldn't have been able to be solved if it weren't for dummy clips. So it's kind of like one step before the next step. So let's go ahead and get started here, and maybe to illustrate this, we might even pull up some other kind of track, because I think this might be a good instance for me to, this ghostly situation would have been good for me to demonstrate chain selector like fading in. But let's take a look at some other chain stuff with dummy clips. So from the YouTube chat, if I could get a suggestion for, let's take like 3 different kinds of sounds, but I'll give Kenneth the benefit of the bass thing first, since they mentioned it before. So let's go ahead and head over into, let's create a new MIDI track first, actually. And let's do this super quickly. So again, 3 suggestions for different kinds of sounds, please, in the YouTube chat. Let's go ahead and take a look over here. Let's do, what should we do? Yeah, let's start off with the bass stuff. So I'll look here in bass. Maybe let's look for in strings actually, so that we can find like some kind of arco bass situation. Yeah, cool. So let's grab that here. And because it's a bass sound, usually in my head I think of bass as being blue. So let's make it blue. Great. Oh, that's a very light blue. Let's do that one instead. And let's put that over here to be organized. Got our drums, bass, chord stuff as well. Cool. So while I'm waiting for a suggestion, I think I saw another question from TWD. Since the chain selection goes from 0 to 127, is it possible to assign it to something like the mod wheel? Yes, absolutely. You can totally do it too. As far as like expressive timbral shifting goes, when you're assigning the chain selector, you are only assigning the chain selector. So you're only going to affect, like if it's going from left to right, for example. So it really depends on your personal programming. If you're programming in the chain selector to be, I don't know, like maybe switching from a brighter instrument to a darker instrument to a brighter instrument with increasing velocity, maybe you could do that. But it just depends on whatever you're assigning to that knob, right? Because it could be anything else. You could be assigning something, as far as like timbral stuff goes, maybe this is kind of going a step back too. But for timbral stuff, I usually think of things like filter cutoff. So not necessarily blending between 2 different instruments, but if it's timbral stuff like filters, resonance, cutoff, totally. I think that would be something that you can definitely do. You can assign any of these knobs to, not necessarily chain selector, unless you have 2 of the same instrument and then maybe one is brighter than the other, but then you might as well just, you might be better off just like directly assigning the cutoff instead of doing a chain selector type of thing. So maybe that's the roundabout way of trying to do like expressive stuff with chain selector, but I found that chain selector is really useful more for like instrument stuff. So on the note of the double bass things, Jonathan has suggested a synth. Let's look for some kind of synth. So usually when I do like, multiple kinds of chain stuff, I have them in another chain selector too. So again, racks, in racks, this idea of that. So we got the bass. We got some, Command G is the shortcut to put something into an instrument rack if you have an existing instrument. So let's do some kind of synth, maybe like some kind of synth key sound. Let's get it from analog. I'm a big fan of analog. So let's do... Sure, why not? Great. So that's our second layer over here. Let's do one more. Anyone? Anyone with a specific suggestion? Maybe? I don't know. We've got the bass, we got the keys stuff. Maybe I'll pick one more. And let's do... Ooh, that could be interesting, but maybe not from the plugged category. Maybe let's look for something else. Let's do another kind of bass, maybe, like instead of collision, let's also do analog. Yeah, sure, cool. So we got this over here. Let's go ahead and... Oh, goodness, I did a silly thing. I didn't drag it into the chain list. There we go. Great. Nice. So now you'll notice also that's all very loud. So this is something else to think about too, everyone. Whenever you're using instrument racks and you have, a stack going on, this is the part that, in referencing what was the stuff that was going on in the chat just now, this is the part that is the parallel processing stuff. So the more you add, the louder it will be. Rio, thank you for the kind words. I'm glad that you admire me, although I don't think that like the cute and young part is true. I think like a lot of producers who happen to be women are really talented because they work hard at their craft. And it's not just because they're like, good looking or young, although I'm happy that you think that I'm good looking and that you think that I'm young also. I've mentioned this before in other streams, but I look much younger than my age. So unfortunately, I'm like your mom's age or something. Someone once joked that I'm like an old-looking young person, a young-looking old person. I guess I am. So cool. So let's take a listen to what we have. And yes, oh my goodness, Dave, I forgot about your D50. Sarathi, hi! Wavetable, okay, cool. So this is gonna end up being like a super heavy type of patch, but you know what, let's go for it. Let's pull over an instance of Wavetable, the default Wavetable, and then let's see if we can find a D50 kind of thing. So let's do D50. I just searched it up, so I'm not sure if we have anything that will come in here, but let's see. D50, oh no, cool. Maybe, that's it though, maybe let's find some kind of like analog style, maybe like a Juno or some other Roland type of situation, if that's cool. Sorry, Dave. Next time I'll get your D50 sound. Maybe like some, not typing in Roland, maybe Juno. That'll find us something. Yeah, and actually this might be Wavetable. So if it is Wavetable, we can, yeah, it is Wavetable, great. So we got a combinational answer from Sarathi and Dave. So let's go ahead and grab all of these and maybe we'll find a way to balance them. Oh, this is a very nice rich sound though. So I'm glad that we kind of picked all of these. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just clicking on each of these volumes, the blue boxes, and I'm clicking and dragging down. So let's go ahead and do this. Great. So we got this combinational sound. I'm also going to go into a lower octave since this is kind of like a bass situation. Let's take a listen to all of our tracks together. Cool. Yeah, let's just do like a riff or something. Great. So we got this bass part now. We've got this lovely, lovely stacked sound. But what if I didn't actually want this to be stacked? What if I wanted it to be separated across the board? And that's really where chains come in handy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what I usually do in a lot of my sets. This is actually something that I implement most of the time when I'm designing stuff for other people too, just because I find it's a really great way of keeping your sounds organized, especially if you're working with many different controllers. So a lot of my clients that I've worked with before who do like live shows, they often have like lots of different things going on. So we use instrument racks very often for specific controllers that we're dealing with because it's almost like a little internal mixer within a rack. So how do we do this? One thing that we do is we separate each of these out into different kinds of zones. And again, people have different ways of working with this, so this is just one way of doing it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all of one of these out, actually. That's enough. And then I'm going to highlight all of these by clicking the first option, holding down Shift, and then clicking on the last chain. Then I'm going to right-click and say Distribute Ranges Equally. What this is going to do, and I know that my camera's blocking it slightly, but you'll be able to see this now. Again, clicking on all of the chains, making sure they're all selected at the same time, and then choosing to distribute the ranges equally. This will spread across all of the 0 to 127 range, and it will make all of them have equal parts of the different chains. So now, implementing the kind of same thinking that we mentioned at the beginning of the stream where we're using the chain selector to navigate between these different parts, let's go ahead and just play the bass, but we'll scroll between the different sounds using chain selector. So here we go. Here's the double bass. Here's the key sound. So we see that's a little bit louder, so we'll drop that down in volume a little. This is really just me comparing the two, making sure the volumes are even. Okay, cool. Here's the analog buzz. Okay, this one can be a bit louder. And now the Juno. Great, cool. So now if I navigate between all of these, yeah, okay, cool. So maybe that's kind of like a precursor to what the dummy clips are gonna be useful for as well. Let's see, yeah, kind of totally needing a little bit of headroom, a little bit of space for the volume. So yeah, that's exactly the volume adjustment stuff that we did. Rio, what kind of hardware do you use? At the moment, I have an Ableton Push over here, but if you wanna take a look at my full list of gear, you can head over to my own channel. So over at my own YouTube channel, I run my own channel too. It's dolltr in lowercase letters, DOLLTRI !CK. You can see my full list of gear over there, and it usually changes per video. But for this particular stream, whoops, my mic. For this particular stream, I have Ableton Push, which is one of my best friends. And yeah, Jonathan, no problem, no apologies for basic questions. How do you get your clips set to loop by default? This is something that will happen if you are working in session view. So if you are working in arrangement view in Ableton Live, it will not loop by default unless you create a new clip. So if you are recording into Live and you want them to loop by default, this is something that you will need to do. Another thing that you should remember to do when you are recording clips is that if you are recording by hand, by hand, I know it's a strange way of saying that, but if you're recording with, say, just by clicking, so you're using your mouse to click on stopping or starting a clip. If you want something to loop automatically, you've got to click on that clip again. Do not click on another box, because that's not going to work. So, for example, if I arm this track, and I've got my bass track going, and let me even use my computer MIDI keyboard for this. So, I've got that, right? So I'm going to turn on the metronome, and let's try looping things. This time I'm going to use my mouse to click on the record button, and then once I'm done recording my loop, I'm going to click on it again, and it will loop automatically. So there we go. And it is looping by default. Cool. So now that we have talked about that, that was actually a really good segue into this last part that I'm going to show you with dummy clips. And this is something that kind of is a little bit like solving the problem that we had, right? So our problem is we want some way to navigate smoothly between each of these different sounds. We got the double bass sound, we got the passed keys sound, the analog bus sound, the classic Juno sound. So I'm going to start off by doing the exact same thing I did just now with the other chain selector. I'm going to assign this chain selector to one of these macros over here. Maybe the same macro just now, so macro 8. Now when I move macro 8 on my instrument rack, I'm able to navigate between these different racks. Yeah, no problem, Jonathan, you're most welcome. So now that I'm able to do this, maybe there's some way that I can have the same clip but switch between different values. So maybe in this first clip over here, this first bass clip, I want that to be my double bass sound. So that's good. I'm set where I am. But maybe the second clip, I want it to be passed keys. So I'm going to make a duplicate of this clip, clicking on the clip and pressing Command D or Control D. I'll do the same thing with these four. So maybe I want each of these sounds to be in one of these clips, to be triggered by one of these clips in the same rack. So this is the same MIDI track that we're using. I'm going to head over into the notes, MIDI note editor view so that I can show clip envelopes. And this is really where the dummy clips start to come in a little more handy. So what I'm going to do on push also, and you don't have to do this on push. So if you don't have a controller like Kenneth mentioned, you don't have to do this with or without push. I'm going to head over here, and now I'm moving this knob for chain selector, and you can see that the envelope of it is also moving in the lower section over here. And again, I can only see it moving because I've clicked on this button that says show or hide envelopes. So these are clip envelopes that are specific to this. This is a little bit like automation and arrangement view, everyone. So if it looks familiar, maybe that's why. But it's also different because this is on a per clip basis. So it's not pertaining to the entire linear arrangement, but it's specifically for this one clip that is looping in time. So I've got the, without spending too much time on this, I'm gonna head over back into my chain selector view, and I'm gonna memorize or remember really referencing some values for each of these chain selector sections. So for example, my double bass region is from around 0 to 30. Okay, that's cool. That's good to know. And then my pass keys region is around like 30 something to 60, and then 60 to 90 or so for my analog buzz. And then classic Juno is around like there. Now what I'm going to do is for each of these tracks, I'm going to put in some specific clip automation that will let me set that value and have that instrument play. So for example here, I'm just going to leave a tiny little click at the chain selector so that I can put it in over here. So I've got my little 18, and if I remember correctly, yes, 18 is in the double bass region. So great, that's going to trigger double bass. You'll also notice the moment I clicked on that, the chain selector knob now has a little dot next to it, which is the same thing as when you've automated a parameter. You will also see that show up. So great, this is, in a way, it's familiar territory, right? So let's head over here to the second clip. We want our pass keys. So in this case, we're going to automate it, not automate it, but put the envelope around maybe 40 something. So that's probably going to get us there. And yes, it does, I think. Maybe. And then we'll just let's do all of these clips first. So analog buzz is, okay, let's do 80 for analog buzz. Great. And then this last one over here, let's do about 120. Great. So now, for each of these clips, when I launch them, they are all going to automatically switch the instrument. So here is bass. Here is passed keys. Here is analog buzz. Here is the wavetable Juno sound. Yeah! Cool. But that's essentially how you use the chain selector stuff. So yay, that's great. Yeah, kind of the automation thing like I mentioned. Yeah, totally. Andrew, thank you for actually mentioning that. I also did mention it earlier on in the stream, Rio. So, and it's not just sorry, bro. It's technically sorry, me as well. So yeah, I mean, as far as like producers go in general, I've spoken this on my other streams too. I used to be a little scared of doing this, but I think at this point it's just best to confront it. But yeah, it's nice that you enjoy our content. But man, if you want to check out some of the other streams, at this point, some folks have already deleted their comments and stuff, but yeah, people delete their comments on the other streams, but you can definitely see there's a difference in the way that women are treated on YouTube streams in general. Sarathi, yeah, how can you use this in a more arrangement type of context? That's a great question. So as far as the recording into arrangement views goes, let's actually take a look at this. So I'm going to try recording into the arrangement view, and maybe let's try launching the clips. That might give us a really great way of visually seeing what is going on when we're doing the different kinds of chain selector things. So here we go. Let's record into arrangement view, and let's play the different clips. Cool. And we stop there. Great. So now let's head over into arrangement view. And I'm also going to hit the back to the arrangement button so that we can see things. But now if I show my automation, you can see that, okay, that is where all of the changes have happened. So it's where all of these little parts have shifted a little bit. And this is useful too in an arrangement context, because let's say you weren't working with a loop. Maybe if you're working in arrangement view, you kind of want to navigate different parts of your live set if you're performing like a linear type of live set. And in that case, it becomes really easy because you can click anywhere where the automation happens and immediately your instrument will shift there. So for example, if I click over here, I'm just clicking in the track itself. I've got my bass sound. if I click here, again, just clicking inside the track, I've got my other kind of past keys sound. If I click here, there's the analog buzz. And then if I click over here, I've got my Juno stuff. So I hope that kind of illustrates that a little bit more into how this works. And you can even see this visually happen over here as well. Like if you want to, let's maybe even do like a chain selector automation that kind of scrolls down. And let's see what we get. So I'm just playing some notes on push, but you can see that the chain selector kind of scrolls between the different layers. So that's a really cool way of thinking about it too. So I hope that answers your question, Sarathi. Kenneth, I end up copy pasting an arrangement view to layer. I never use clip view. I have to get more proficient in both screens. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's not a must, but I've found that, there are so many wonderful things about being able to combine session views, great things, with arrangement views, great things, and vice versa. So that's one part that I love, and you can probably tell that I'm really passionate about it. It's one of my favorite things. It's one thing that I wish, certain other DAWs maybe might get a little bit more into. I think Logic is well on its way since it has the new update with 10.5 and live loops view and so on. But yeah, Zane, I guess this could be set up for a gradual transition between instruments as well. Yeah, totally. So Zane, maybe you came in a little bit later in the stream, but that's absolutely what we did just now in the first part of the stream. We used this chain selector to gradually blend between two different kinds of instruments. So let me do this now in arrangement view just to put us all on the same page. I'm going to blend between maybe this chain selector all the way here and this all over here. Now I've got my ghost lead up, so this is, let me go into a higher octave too. So I'm going to play stuff on push. You don't need to see my hands, but as I'm playing stuff, notice how the sound is morphing between this synth lead and this ghost lead kind of situation. So now saw lead. Cool. So we had that morph between the original like ghosty sounding thing and then the synth saw situation. So I know that our time is actually up, everyone, but thank you so much for tuning in. I'll answer two last questions. TWD, is it possible to make chain selector a function of time through attaching an LFO to the macro knob of an envelope? Yes, absolutely. You could totally do that. I highly encourage looking into Max for live devices. I think that would help you greatly with that. Sarathi, sounds like saves on CPU. Yes, absolutely. It totally does. And here's one more thing, Sarathi, since you mentioned the CPU stuff. To further enhance the CPU saving, you could potentially also map the on and off buttons to your chains also. So that could be something, that's also another thing that people forget that is possible. You can totally map device on and off to these knobs also, so that the more you turn the knob, you'll turn a specific device on and then you'll turn it off. And that's something that's been really useful for certain heavier synths like Wavetable, for example. So just turning it on when you're using it and then just turning it off when you're not. So that also will help with CPU. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. Thanks for your patience, as always, with the camera stuff. Hopefully I'll have my other camera on next week, be able to figure that out. But yeah, no problem. Thank you, Fender Bender. It's great sharing tips and tricks with all of you, and I really appreciate this entire community. Very, very fun to share and hear from everyone in a respectful sort of way. I think that's one thing that is always useful to remember. Thank you, Jonathan, for the kind words. I hope the loop thing was clarification. Usually it should happen by default, so that's why I was a little curious as to why you asked that question, but hopefully that cleared things up. It might be different, I think, in arrangement view sometimes. Mick, you're most welcome too, and Sarathi, yes, you too. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please don't forget to enter the giveaway. We love giving away stuff, and we love seeing you again, so hopefully we'll be able to see you again next week too. I stream I do the Monday show always, but we have stuff every day, and tomorrow we will have something on as well for TAETRO Talks. And oh my goodness, I just realized I forgot to change something. So actually give me 1 second. Changing the setup for one of these things, but let me just set this up. Yeah, okay, cool. So on Tuesdays, our show is TAETRO Talks, where TAETRO, our creative director, he interviews someone, and tomorrow we have a very exciting guest, so please stay tuned for that. But otherwise, you can also find me on my own YouTube channel, which is lowercase letters DOLLTR exclamation point CK. I go by dolltr when I'm doing artist stuff, but when I'm teaching, it's a different mode in my head. So I use Claire for that, and it's great to see all of you again. But I hope to see you again next Monday, same time, same place, here on 343 Labs YouTube channel. And thanks everyone. See you soon.
Across the universe, a whisper wakes. Have you been listening for a wind of change? My ears are open, eyes aren't closed. I'm waiting for a miracle again. Have you been calling out my name? Oh, we're in a world taken by madness, sadness in a sea of stolen words, broken and shattered. What mattered means no more. In a time shaken by thunder, wonder is the seed of life foregone, crippling under. What happened to us all? We fade, pulled back into the shade. We fade, pulled back into the shade. Just fade away, melt into a memory. You can't save the day. If only you had tried. Just fade away, melt into a memory. You can't save the day. If only you had tried. Across the ocean blue, a wave will rise, consuming all who walk through day and night. My heart is beating with the drums. The breath is coursing through my lungs again. Or is it just a trick of time? We're in a world taken by madness, sadness in a sea of stolen words, broken and shattered. What mattered means no more. In a tide breaking the silence,